Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Daniel. I'll be guiding you through this afternoon on optimizing your online presence using some of our interaction-based web forms, some reporting, and the Twitter Listening Hub. Today we will be covering email sign-up forms, constituent information forms, and a few various uses for those. Volunteer activity forms. We will cover how to get the HTML of an email you've created in Bloomerang so that you can share it on your own website. We'll take a look at website visit tracking. We're going to take a look at our Twitter Listening Hub, and we'll also be taking brief asides into the reporting system, so to show you how you can report on a variety of the things we will be practicing how to set up. So we will go ahead and dive right into our interaction forms. So if you click on the settings gear on the left side of Bloomerang and go to website integration, you'll see these tiles for our various types of forms that we have. You're likely already familiar with the online giving forms and event registration forms. Those are transaction-based forms. The other forms we have here are what we call interaction-based forms, and so instead of creating a transaction when a user submits, it just creates an interaction on their timeline. So these types of forms do not process any dollars, and as a result, you can set them up without having a processor integrated with your database. Because they do not have any processing info associated with them, they do not require a secured web page. So we don't offer hosted versions of these forms, since they can just be placed directly on your website, because there's no sensitive data being submitted that requires the enhanced security. So we will start with our email sign-up form. It's the most basic of our forms, and got a couple set up. This one, when you go into the options to create your form, there's not a ton here. The email sign-up forms are very basic. In terms of fields that are displayed, it's just going to be fields for first name, last name, and email address. You do have the option to add constituent or interaction custom fields if you wish, but typically you want an email sign-up form to be as few fields as possible, just so it's something really quick and easy for your constituents to fill out if they want to be on your newsletter. They come preset with a default confirmation email. If you desire, you can set a custom confirmation email, and that would go out when they submit their form. But we're just going to leave that as the default. Any interaction-based email can be set as a custom confirmation for these forms, and that's true for all of the forms we will be covering today. They're all interaction-based, and so they can have interaction-based emails set as their confirmation. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit next right here, and that will show you, that shows us our success page. So this will show up directly on the page once you have pressed the submit button. So we've got thank you for registering. Your email address has been added to our mailing list. You can customize this text. If you would rather redirect them to a custom confirmation page, you can use the redirect URL, and you just type in the link for whatever page you want them to wind up on once they're done. That could be back to your home page or a special page that says thank you and has other information on it. We'll just leave it as our built-in Bloomerang with the defaults. Hit save and preview. And so this, you can see what the form looks like just first name, last name, email. Super, super simple. If you want to customize it more, change the text, add some other elements, completely change like the layout of the form, we do give you the option to self-host the form. And doing that, we will give you the full text of HTML for you to copy and paste on your website. If you decide to self-host, just keep in mind that we are not able to troubleshoot custom code. That's outside of what we can support. So you'll have to have someone who's familiar with HTML or hire a web developer to make any customizations and add those to your website. We are just going to go ahead and stop self-hosting. And you can go ahead and hit, we're going to hit publish on the base one, and this just gives us a snippet of JavaScript, which is exactly like your online donation forms, event registration forms. You copy this snippet of code, paste it into your website. It is JavaScript, so however your content management system handles snippets of JavaScript, you'll want to look up that. Most of the time it's fairly straightforward. So I have got a demo site set up, and it is just right here. So this is our email sign-up form. We see how it looks on the website, and I'll just show you a quick submission. We're going to use one of my demo constituents, our founder, Jay Love. We're going to copy his email out. And so we're going to put Jay Love. Set that in there, click sign up. And you can see we've got thank you for registering. Your email address has been added to our mailing list, just like we had in there. And so now that that's in there, that will actually show up on Jay's timeline. You can see we've got the interaction website that just got created, email sign up form, created today. And so now he is on our email list. One thing particular to email sign-up forms is it is the only way if a constituent has in the past unsubscribed, so they no longer have any email interests selected, or they've customized their email interests and don't have certain ones selected. If they sign up via the email sign-up form, it will re-opt them into all of your email interests. Basically sets those back to their default of having everything selected. None of our other forms will do that. It's only the email sign-up form. When you submit via those online forms, it does look to your database to see if the information that was submitted via the form matches what's already in the database. And it does that based on the first and last name and email address. With our other forms that collect additional data, it will also check the phone number and address, but since the email sign-up forms only have email, that's what it's looking for. If only their name is in Bloomerang and not their email address, that won't be enough data to determine a match. Otherwise, all of your John Smiths in your database would wind up on the same profile, and that would be bad. So I'm going to go ahead and open this back up and take a look at some custom field options. If your organization is doing like a double opt-in process for managing your email list, so you've got a set of custom fields where a constituent can pick the types of communications they want to receive. And then they also have the default email interests. You could add the constituent field for the interests to the online form, save it, publish it, and that would show up on the form. So I'll give you an example. So we've already got this form on my website. All I have to do is save and preview. And once it's saved, we refresh our site here. You'll now see that that interests field, which actually got set up as volunteer interest, is now on that form, and they can select the data from that, and it will come in when they do their submission. All right. So we are going to go ahead and cancel out of this, and let's move on to our constituent information forms. So we're going to go to website integration again and constituent info. Our constituent information forms are very much similar to the email sign up. As I mentioned before, they will not opt in if they've already opted out in the past, but they collect more data. They include email, address, and phone number. You do need to set the subject and purpose for your constituent info forms. They default where'd our JLove constituent go? I'll show you how the email sign-up forms default. They default to the purpose of other for channel of website. For the constituent info forms, though, you can set whatever purpose you want, because these are meant to be for whatever you need. Frequently, they are used for free event signups. So if you're running an event that you're not collecting any money for, but you want people to still register so you have kind of a rough head count. So those will show up. You can create any kind of additional event info you would need to collect for that form. You can create as interaction or constituent custom fields, depending on the type of information. So, for example, I've got a guests custom field, and we can add I believe I've got okay, no, I don't have a number of guests field, but you could create a field for a number of additional guests, and then this is a text field for any additional guest names that you want registering for this event. So we can actually set the purpose of this one to special events. We're pretending this is a special event registration form. As you can see in the confirmation email section, I have set a custom confirmation email, so this would replace the default. You will still get the notification that gets sent to you as a user of Bloomerang will still be the same. That goes to whatever email address you have listed in the organization settings page in the settings menu, which is access via settings, view all settings, and then my organization. So whatever email address you have listed here will always get those notification emails. But if you have additional people on your team that need to get notifications whenever someone submits via this form, you can manually add those in here. So we're going to go ahead and hit next. We've just got the success page. It works exactly the same as the email sign up. So we'll go to save and preview. And so this is kind of basically what the form looks like. As you can see, we've got the name fields, email, those three are required. Phone, address are not required, but the more info they input, the more points of data the database will have for looking for a matching profile that already exists. And if it doesn't find that, it will create a new profile for them. So again, to get this form on your website, you hit publish. It gives you the snippet. You paste that on your website. Mine is already there. And you can see here's our constituent information form on a website with the custom field we added for additional guest names. Okay, so now let's move on to our third type of interaction form, which is our volunteer activity form. So these forms are designed for anyone who's managing volunteers and you want to track when they work. You can set up a volunteer activity form to allow your volunteers to log their own hours rather than having one of your staff members record it and input it manually. So these volunteer activity forms, as a base, they collect name and contact info as well as the date of the activity. This is the only form that allows you to set the date of the interaction that will be created. So you can have volunteers log past activity as well. It won't always show up the day they submit it. I have created some volunteer activity fields specifically for this. I have one that lists the activity, so if you've got a few set things that your volunteers always do, you can create a custom field for that so that they can log the specific activity they did. And then I also have a custom field for volunteer hours. And that's just a number, type it in field where they record how long they worked. I don't have a confirmation email set for the volunteer activity form. It's not particularly necessary because since it's your volunteers filling out their own info, they know they're doing it. You can certainly set a custom confirmation thanking them for their email or for their time, which is always a good thing to do. The success page is just the same as it is. If you've got this form hosted on like an unlisted page and you just want to have like one tablet in the office where your volunteers log their hours on the way out, you could set the redirect URL back to the same page where it's that unlisted page just so it goes immediately back in if you wanted. Otherwise, you can still have it on the unlisted page and use this, and then you just have to refresh between each submission. So we're going to go ahead and save and preview this. You'll see that we've got the date field is listed here under additional info. That's in there by default. It's required for submission. And then we've got our activity and hours custom fields here. And so we can take a look at how that looks on the website. And it's exactly the same. And let's go ahead and log some volunteer activity for Jay. And so we're logging some activity for today. Let's say we did 3 hours of fundraising. Just submit that. So thanks for volunteering. Next person who needs to log their activity just needs to click log additional activity. That will reload the form with all the fields blanked out so that they can enter in their own information. All right. So now that we've got this information in the database, it will of course show up on the timelines of each individual, but going around and searching for everyone who's got those interactions is not the most efficient way to go about it. We can report on it, of course. So let's go ahead and take it to the reports section of the database. For all three of these types of forms, it's going to create an interaction on the timeline. So we're going to start a new template. We're going to build a report from scratch, and we're going to select interactions. And the easiest way to narrow it down to the form you're wanting to report on is to use the online form filter. And you can actually select the specific form you're wanting to take a look at. So let's do our email sign-up form. And so you can see we've got 2 email sign-up interactions for Jay listed here. So you can use this to see everyone who signed up through a form. If you're wanting to look at activity for a specific date range, you can, of course, add a date filter. And we've got the default dynamic ranges like last week, last month, this month, this year, to narrow it down that way. Or you can change it to between and set a custom date range. We're just going to go ahead and do during this month. All right, and we can say so far in the month of May, Jay is our only constituent that signed up via our form. So let's take a look at our, rather than our email sign-up forms, let's do our volunteer activity. Let's say we want to report on volunteer activity. So you can see we've got 3 activities logged. We have some custom fields on that form, though, that have additional information. So let's go ahead and add those to the report. So we have volunteer hours worked, and we had activity. And so you add those columns, and it will show up with the data from those custom fields on the report so that you can view them. If you want to break it up by how much has been done either by a particular individual and get a subtotal of their hours, or you want to see a breakdown of how much has been done for each specific type of activity like we've got specified here, you can group by your columns depending on what data you're looking for. So for example, I want to see the breakdown by activity. I'm going to click on the activity column header, select a group by this column, and then just click OK. I don't want to hit this collapse group to one row button because then I'll lose the individual details and it'll just give me one single row for each activity with whatever interaction would be on top. It would still aggregate the hours in that case, but I want to see each of them broken out. So you can see we've now got 2 for fundraising, and we've got a subtotal of how many hours were done for fundraising, and we've got our subtotal for cleaning as well. All right, before we get into website tracking and our other bits, does anyone have any questions so far? All right, I'm going to start working on our next bit on website tracking, but if you do have a question, feel free to type it out in chat. Okay, so the last bit of website integration stuff we're going to go over is website visit tracking. So in our website integration section, we have this tile here for website visits. This isn't something that can be edited at all. You don't need to select purpose or anything. It's not a form that your users fill out. What this does is it allows Bloomerang to put a cookie in the browser cache for anyone visiting your website. If they have navigated to your website, using the link in an email that you have sent out via Bloomerang. In the footer of all those emails, you should have a link to your website. And if they have filled out any kind of online form, a Bloomerang online form that's posted on your website, this will also allow that cookie to be stored there. And the way it works is anytime someone visits your website, it checks for that stored cookie. And if it finds it, that cookie is associated with the profile, that user profile in your database, and it will just log that they have visited, that they have visited your website. I've already got this pasted onto my website. It's best if you can put it either in the header or footer of your web page. That way it's on each separate page of your website. And so if we go to Jay's profile, you'll see that we have, if they visited your website, they get this extra box here on the right-hand side of their summary for online engagement, and it shows the number of times the constituent has visited your website in the last 30 days and lists the most recent visit. And you can mouse over that for additional info for today so you can see exactly the time it happened. You can, of course, report on website visits as well. So if we go to our reporting list, and website visits are tracked at the constituent level. So when you're building a website tracking report, you want to build a constituent report. But we have two filters for that. So you can filter either by the date of their last website visit or the number of visits someone has had within the past 30 days. So we're just going to go ahead and use between, and we're going to leave it blank just so we get anyone who's ever visited the website, but you can certainly specify a date range. And then we have a few columns specific to a website tracking visit. So you can we have has visited website, which just gives a yes or no on if someone has visited your website before. We have last website visit, which will give the date and time they last visited, and website visits last 30 days, which again just gives the total number of times. So we'll go ahead and add those to the report just so you can see how they generate. So you can see my profile has visited the website, but it wasn't in that last 30 days. And then we've got 2 visits from J Love within the past 30 days, and we can see when those were. So this is a great way to keep track of your engagement. And if you have the website tracking visits enabled, any visit to your website will increase the engagement level of that constituent. So that is something to keep in mind if you're able to, if they're driving traffic to your website, that shows positively on their record. And good ways to drive traffic to your website. If you have a newsletter that you publish, send out via email, you can host a copy of that on your website and allow people to access that. Might drive some additional traffic. Let me show you how to do that. So let's say you've got a newsletter. I'm going to open up my email templates here. Let's see. All right. We've got our nice puppy newsletter here. So you've set up a newsletter in Bloomerang. You want to share it on your website. Unlike Constant Contact, unfortunately, we do not have we don't host copies of these newsletters ourselves. So there's not we don't have our own hosted version that you can link people to. But once you've created your email, you click this Get HTML button up here at the top. It will download the raw HTML of your newsletter into a HTML document that can be opened with your browser or a plain text file. So we're going to go ahead and save that. And what you can do with that document is you can open it up. It will open it up in your browser by default. You could also choose to open it with a text editor like Notepad or something. You'd want to do a plain text editor in that case. And you can either right-click and select View Page Source, or you can do Control-U, Command-U if you're on a Mac, View Page Source, and that gives you the raw HTML code for the newsletter. You can then copy and paste this directly onto your website, and it will show up on whatever page you posted it to with all the text and stuff. A word of caution when you're doing this, if the newsletter you sent out had data fields in it, so like it was filling in the constituent's name or like their lifetime giving total or something, anything that was pulling constituent data from the profile, you might want to consider creating a separate version of the email that just says, dear friend of your organization name, and doesn't include any of that constituent data in it, just because it won't have a profile to pull from when you're doing the raw text copying of the HTML. So that way it won't show up on your web page with a blank piece of data. But then you can, once you've got the code posted on the website, the web newsletter appears there. You can then put links to that page on your various social media, Twitter, Facebook, whatever your organization is using, and that can help drive more traffic to your website, and you can hopefully get some additional website tracking visits off of that as well. Okay. So the last thing we're going to take a look at today is our Twitter listening hub. So we've got a Twitter icon right here on the left side of Bloomerang. And so I've already got mine integrated. If it's your first time visiting this, it will ask you to register your Twitter handle. And if you're going to do that, be sure to, let me open up Twitter really quick. The way our Twitter registration works is it takes a look at whatever account is currently logged into Twitter. So I'm currently logged into Bloomerang's Twitter. If I was managing social media for an organization but also had my own Twitter, I would need to make sure that I was logged out of my own personal Twitter first and logged into the organization's Twitter when I did the verification process in Bloomerang. So it looks at whatever one's currently logged in, and you'll see I can get to that screen by clicking Change on this configuration screen. It just asks you to, it's Twitter's API page, it asks to authorize Bloomerang. You just select Authorize App, and that takes you back into Bloomerang, and it shows the Twitter handle here. It's best to make sure that the Twitter handle you've registered here also matches the one that you have listed in your organization settings. So if you go Settings, Gear, View All Settings, My Organization again, you got the Twitter handle field right here on that side, on the right-hand side. It does require an admin user to set this up, but once the Twitter account is linked to Bloomerang, any standard user can view the actual tweets listening hub. And so the listening hub itself will show things that have come into your organization's Twitter feed, as well as any hashtags that you have specifically asked to watch. You can watch up to 5 hashtags, and you just type in the hashtag you wanted to do. And add that. If you need to delete them, just hit the X next to 1. And so you can either look at specific mentions of your organization, or you can check your specific hashtags. So you can see we've got fundraising hashtags that are now showing up in here. If you find someone on Twitter that you know is a constituent in your database, you can hit match constituent, and that will do a search based on the name. You can also type in like the constituent account number, or if you know they're under a different name in your database, you could add that there. You select them, and it will associate that Twitter handle with their profile in your database. And the next time you go back, like we have for Jay here, it will show their engagement score, and you can either click on, if you click on the tweet here, it will take you to that exact tweet on Twitter. And if you click on their timeline, their name here on the right-hand side, that will take you to their timeline, and you can see that you've got all of their mentions and stuff are showing up as interactions on the timeline now. It can take a while to load the tweet itself, but it shows up with whatever mention was there, or if it was a hashtag, it will say hashtag and then show the hashtag. And just like the website visits, tweets that they make that either mention your organization or have a hashtag that you're tracking will positively affect the engagement score. We don't have a way to scan the contents of the tweet to know if it's positive or negative, but it will, they are interacting with your database, with your organization, and so we do reflect that. And you can report on the Twitter interactions, of course. So if we go to the reports section of our database, tweets do come in as interactions, so we're going to build a new report from scratch and select interactions. And so you can filter for those either by the channel filter, and we've got Twitter as a channel. And if you're looking for specifically mentions or hashtags, you can use the subject filter and type in either mention or hashtag. And if you're looking for a specific hashtag, you do space, hyphen, space, and then the specific hashtag, just how it would appear in the subject. And then the actual content of the tweet shows up in the note column like you're seeing here. You'll also notice that, so if you see someone that's interacting with you a lot on Twitter and they are not in your database, when you go to the Match Constituent screen, you can actually create a new constituent from here. And that will automatically pull in their Twitter handle and whatever name is associated with their Twitter account. And so you can use that as a good base point to start reaching out with those people that are having a lot of interaction with you in other areas of the internet. All right, so for the Twitter interactions themselves, they will always have the subject and channel gets filled in automatically, as does the date, but we leave the purpose blank. If all of your hashtags are associated with a particular, if they're like a special event or they're volunteering related, you could set that and save them just for easier tracking down the line. And if whoever's working on this is trying to manage the Twitter feed and try and match them to constituents, you can actually filter for unmatched versus matched tweets, just to check if anyone is in your database, or you want to take a look at who's already in your database, see what they're doing. And that's just done with these filter bubbles on the right-hand side. So all unmatched, matched. Deselect the one that you're not looking for if you've got multiple selected. Very similar to how our report filtering works for viewing your different types of reports. If you're going to be creating hashtags for your organization, it's always good to find something kind of unique to your org. We added fundraising, and you can see that the tweets we get from hashtag fundraising, a lot of them are not at all related to our organization, so that's probably not going to be terribly useful from an engagement perspective, because every nonprofit's doing fundraising. So we do have some hashtags for some Bloomerang specific thing. We've got Bloomerang Tech, which is our Twitter handle, BloomCon, which is our conference that we've done in the past, just kind of general fundraising, and then Bloomerang itself, in case any of our customers are talking about us and haven't specifically mentioned our actual Twitter account. Like if you were to do like Giving Tuesday in the hashtags, how many results would you wind up with that? You'd have thousands upon thousands for everyone who's given to Giving Tuesday. And even if you do try and choose a relatively unique hashtag, some of them may not be related to your organization. For example, Bloomerang is also a type of purple lilac, apparently. So we sometimes get results for horticulture and flowers with that hashtag. There's also there's another company in somewhere in Europe named Bloomerang as well, so occasionally we find stuff from them. So once you've got this all in there and you've got you've integrated Twitter, you're taking a look at your constituents' timelines, you can sometimes get some pretty interesting data. For example, if you have your, you may have noticed in our online forms, go to edit here. On the success page screen, we've got Twitter sharing options. So if you have these enabled on your online forms and people opt to post a tweet about when they donate or when they've signed up for an event, you can then see that in context in the Twitter Listening Hub and on their timeline. So you can see, okay, this person made a donation, then they also tweeted about it. That's great. And people that show that kind of engagement might be good candidates for a little extra touch. Reach out to them. The goal with this is to help build relationships with your donors, with your volunteers, with people who are interested and active within your organization. And so the Twitter Listening Hub just basically gives you an extra avenue where you can kind of keep track of those interactions. It is important to note that the Twitter Listening Hub is not able to help you manage your actual social media account. You can't manage your Twitter through this. We can't make posts directly from Bloomerang. You would still need to go into your Twitter account and send those tweets. And we don't have ways to track analytics on the things that you do post on Twitter. So you can't see if things are trending or how many people have retweeted your tweets that you've posted. That's not included in our Twitter Listening Hub. We're just taking a look at the mentions people have for your organization and seeing if they match anyone who's already in your database. All right, we have actually worked through that a little early. Does anyone have any specific questions or examples they'd like to see? It could be back about custom interaction forms, constituent information forms, things like that. But we have covered all of the pre-planned material I had for today. So if you don't have any questions, okay, we got a question from chat. How long does the snippet take to show up in a constituent record? For the website tracking, so once the snippet goes onto your actual website, and you won't see any additional website visits until basically the next time they visit it after having filled out a form or clicked on the link on email for the first time. It requires that initial interaction, that initial either visit to your website from one of our links or from filling out an online form to get the cookie into the browser. Once that happens, the next time they visit your website, we'll be able to track that cookie, and that will show up usually within a few minutes of them visiting. It will show up on the profile. One example I did want to specifically go over back in our constituent information forms. So if your organization is working with volunteers a lot, you can set up a constituent information form to allow people to express their interest in volunteering, to sign up, say, hey, I want to volunteer for you. And so you can set up a constituent info form and add, I've got these set up as constituent fields because they're constituent attributes. I have the interests custom field, which you may have remembered from earlier. And these are like, what kinds of things are you interested in helping our organization do? So I would actually adjust the display name here for what shows up on the forms. How would you like to help? And then I've also created a availability custom field so that you can let your donors indicate to you when they're free to give their time. The field I have set up is pretty basic. It's daytime, evening, and weekends. But if you have specific events that you're doing, you could list the individual events that you have going on. So you can say, you know, our Mother's Day weekend brunch, or you know, and have the specific dates listed in those fields. And then so I'm going to go ahead and next, save and preview, and let's actually take a deeper look at that that availability field to give you an example of how that would work. I'm going to go to my constituent custom fields, and I've got volunteer info section here, interests. So, oops, sorry, not interests. I want availability. All right, so I've got day, evenings, and weekends, but you can create values for specific events. And then as time goes on, your events have passed, you just deactivate the values that are no longer applicable. If you deactivate a custom field value, it won't show up on any new interactions going further, so it won't show up on the online form. I'll leave Mother's Day active. But when you deactivate them, you don't lose any of the data that you've collected previously. It's still in the database. You can still report on it, filter for it, but it just doesn't show up. So now if I save this custom field and we go to our demo site, refresh our volunteer activity page. Actually, no, this was our constituent information form. You'll see that we now have those custom fields here, and you saw I added Father's Day, but it's not showing up because I deactivated it. So let's say I'm interested in events for the Mother's Day brunch. And so you can fill that out. Let's do J Love again, get his email in there for matching, submit this. And so now we're going to go to Jay's profile, and I had set those up as constituent fields. So now if we go down to our volunteer info, we see that Jay is available for the Mother's Day brunch and is interested in doing event volunteering. And you can, of course, filter for those as well, just the same way as we did before. Just filter for the online form submission using the online form filter, and then add columns for the custom fields that you added, so availability and interests in this case. Yeah. So that's just one example of another way you can use those constituent info forms. That basically concludes our presentation for today. If you have any questions down the road, please do let us know. You can always email us at support@bloomerang.co, or go to the question mark icon up here and select live chat online to talk to us in real time. There's also a link for the email in here. And we look forward to seeing you at the next Academy class. I hope all of you have a wonderful rest of your afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great day.